Today's February 13th, 2014. We're on the record at 10:03 a.m. to video record the deposition of Robert Manella in the case styled Eric B. Fletcher versus Nick Maneros II et al. Will counsel please state their appearances?
Eric Fletcher, pro se.
Sal Melly, Gilbride Tusa, Last and Spillane, LLC, attorneys for Nicholas Manero Jr. and Nick Maneros II, Inc.
Will the court reporter please swear in the witness?
Raise your hand. You solemnly swear the testimony to give the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Mr. Melly.
Manella.
Manella.
That's Mr. Melly.
Mr. Fletcher, may I just note just the standard objections that I've been noting for all depositions, which is we're reserving our right to object at trial with respect to all questioning of this witness, except objections with respect to the form of the question. And that's it. Thank you.
Duly noted. Good morning, Mr. Manella.
Good morning.
I'd just like to thank you and appreciate the fact that you showed up here voluntarily. What you see before you is what I sent you in the email. It's the notice of deposition with the state of Connecticut, and it's the motion for commission. The motion for commission will be done on February 22nd by the Connecticut Superior Court, and at the end of this, I'll reserve the right at a later date if I need to actually serve proper process through the West Palm Beach County Courthouse. I reserve that right later on. But as of right now, it's been our understanding that you're here voluntarily to answer the questions that I've provided.
Since I'm not an attorney, not being represented by counsel, I'm here on my own. Am I allowed to invoice somebody for my time, for taking my time out for preparation and appearance before a deposition?
That would be kind of up to Mr. Manella as to whether Mr. Manella and Mr. Melly, because I'm not sure whether I would be allowed to pay you to appear or not, as to whether you would make an objection.
I'm a fact.
You're a fact
witness, for for two parties. Because I'm not employed by either one right now, and I was employed by both before.
Sir,
so just in case in like a divorce, sometimes I've appeared as a fact witness because I've represented both husband and wife, and I wasn't a expert witness for either one of them, and I was able to submit an invoice that both sides, I came here voluntarily, so obviously I'm going to be here whether I got reimbursed or not, but I'm just asking the question.
And you are entirely correct, and I would be willing to agree to that if...
No, sir. Here's how it works. Mr. Manero and Nick Maneros II, Inc. has not asked for your deposition here today, sir. It's been asked solely by Mr. Fletcher.
Okay.
And there is, I'm not your attorney, but there is Florida procedure as to reimbursement for fact witnesses. I can't advise you on that.
Okay.
But with respect to payment from Mr. Manero or Nick Maneros II, the answer is that would not be the case. It would.
The answer is to pound sand.
No, the answer is not pound sand, sir. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is there's Florida procedure for a fact witness to be paid, and it's not paid by the party that's not taking your deposition, sir.
Based on the fact I don't have, I don't go to a deposition every week. I'm not a, expert witness every other week, so might as well. If you don't ask, you don't get.
Understood.
I guess I will research that and deal with you accordingly.
This is what you have before you. That's your copy for you to take home. And this will be marked Exhibit, Manella Exhibit 1, which is the same document you have in front of you. And then what we're going to do is when I have the documents, I'm going to take the documents from my pile, hand them to you, and then when you're finished with them, you'll hand them over to the court reporter.
Okay. So this is my stack. I should put this away, I guess.
Yes, that's yours so that you can take. Mr. Manella, your educational experience and background.
I have a bachelor's degree in marketing from I attended 2 years freshman sophomore at Wayne State University in Detroit, Michigan. I obtained a marketing degree a bachelor's from Michigan State University in June of 1981. I took approximately 50 hours in accounting classes at the master's level at Walsh College of Accountancy in Troy, Michigan. Took the CPA exam, passed the CPA exam on first try, said screw Michigan weather, did not complete the master's degree, came to Florida and have been practicing as a CPA in Florida since November of 1986.
You mentioned earlier, just to get this out of the way, that you actually know Elizabeth Dunn, who has also
Yes.
been deposed. How do you know Elizabeth Dunn?
She's a former partner of mine.
Was it an amicable split?
When I left my old firm, it was completely amicable.
So there would be no hard feelings between the two of you, or there would be no...
I have some hard feelings after Elizabeth Dunn left, but I'm long past and resolved, not hurt.
Okay. So you had... Do you remember being hired by Nick Monero's two? Monero's...
I remember speaking with you on the phone. It was a referral. Could I refer to some notes? Is that okay?
Sure, go ahead.
I believe
Whatever.
I was referred by Lori Steinberg, spoke to you on the phone. You came and met me in my office. I don't think Nick Monero was involved in the hiring process at all, from what I remember. I think it was strictly you and I.
Okay. Did you ever meet Nick Monero or Constance Monero in your office?
To the best of my recollection, no. Could I have met them? Yes, but I do not remember ever meeting them.
Do you know if Nick approved your hiring?
I was under the assumption that he would have approved it, but I don't know. I know I spoke to him subsequent, and he never said, "Why were you hired?" So I'm assuming then that he approved of the hiring.
Did you ever speak to Mr. Monero?
Yes.
What did you speak to Mr. Monero about? In the beginning of the relationship, and when he objection to form, you can continue. You can still answer the question. But let me finish the question.
Sure.
So you have, early on, when you were first beginning work for Monero's Inc., did you speak to Mr. Monero?
I honestly do not remember. It was, approximately 9 years ago, and I cannot remember everything from 9 years ago, 8 or 9 years ago.
Mr. Manella, if I may, Mr. Fetcher, Mr. Fetcher, if there's a document that's going to refresh his recollection, I'm okay with him saying that there's a document that can refresh his recollection, but I think we're here to hear his personal testimony. I don't have any objection to Mr. Manella if he has notes that will assist him in refreshing his recollection, but I do have an objection to, in order to initially answer the question, looking at notes to answer that question, Mr. Fetcher.
What I was trying to do is I have a new client document and an initial invoice, so I was trying to get a date. So now I believe it was 8.5 years ago I was hired. So
it's a technical issue for me, sir. It has nothing to do with you personally.
He's asking that if you have documents that you're referencing, they need to be turned over so that we both had. And
Not a problem.
That's why I referenced in the beginning that you've simply been given this notice of deposition and you haven't actually been subpoenaed yet, pending the state of Connecticut issuing the commission, and then it would go through the West Palm Beach County Courthouse, at which point you would be required by law to turn over all those documents. You can voluntarily turn over those documents if you please.
That's fine.
But as of right now, since neither of us have access to the documents to which you're looking at, he's simply asking that you don't.
Not a problem.
And I have no objection, sir. Again, if you have a document that will refresh your recollection, and you can certainly state that and refer to the document. I just have a problem with
Not a problem.
reading off of a document, sir. It's technicality.
But
that's what we do.
It's an accountant that tries to be black and white and not say approximately. I'm trying to be more exacting.
I appreciate that,
Okay.
sir.
Okay, can we?
Thank you, Attorney Fetcher.
Did you ever discuss when you repeat the question that we had? I believe it was about Mr. Monero in the early part of the relationship, or at what point did you ever speak to Mr. Monero?
That's why I referenced in the beginning that you have simply been given in the notice of deposition subpoena pending.
Before that, with the actual question, it was. I can rephrase.
Reference, and
I can rephrase the
there's a
question.
lot of colloquy that went on before that.
Exactly. So I can rephrase the
In the
question.
beginning of the relationship, and they said objection to form, you can continue, you can still answer the okay, but actually, what did you speak to Mr. Monero about? And then he said form, and then you said
Exactly. So it's Mr. Manella, back to where we were. Did you ever speak to Mr. Monero?
Yes.
Did you speak to Mr. Monero in the early part of employment?
Let me answer the question correctly.
Sure.
Since I had never met Mr. Monero, I did believe I was speaking to Mr. Monero on the phone. But I could have been speaking to anybody on the phone for all I know.
Okay. But to the best of your recollection, you
Yes.
did speak to Mr. Monero?
Yes.
Okay, can you let him finish his question before you answer? Because it's going to take longer. Just let him totally get his question out.
Did you ever speak to so you did speak to who you believe to be Mr.
Yes.
Nicholas Monero? What did you speak to Mr. Nicholas Monero about?
Probably general accounting matters as to what type of business he had. Like any other client, my experience, whether it be restaurant experience or some real estate experience, and maybe what form of business the corporation was organized as.
Okay.
Just real, probably general and generic issues.
This is going to be Exhibit 2. It's going to be 4 pages. Do you know who Lawrence Steinberg is?
Yes.
No, you can refresh your recollection. You can look over the document. How do you know Lawrence Steinberg?
As an attorney, he was referred to me by another attorney to do some work. And I've worked with him for 8 or 9 or 10 years, something like that.
Did Laurie Steinberg recommend you as the accountant for Nick Monero's too?
Yes.
Do you know what this document is?
This document, to me, looks like a form that when a payroll company signs somebody up as a client, they use this to show them the pricing of their services and to get some authorization from the IRS to allow them to speak to the IRS for payroll matters.
Did you have any involvement with setting of salaries or doing setting of salaries?
If I did, it was very superficially. I don't remember.
Like I said, if it was a long time, if you don't remember,
this, for example, was done in February of 2005. I don't believe I had been hired at that point.
No, you hadn't. Well, actually, you had just been.
I'm going to object, Mr. Fetcher. Please do not have
Actually, I don't
conversation
know.
with the witness.
And so you do know Laurie Steinberg, and you've known him before. You don't remember whether you set the salaries or not. Has that been your testimony? I'm asking if that's been your testimony, so I know
Objection
where
as to form
you can answer the
and
question.
leading. And I'm going to note a standing objection for leading.
I do not remember assisting in setting up of salaries.
Did you ever do a cash flow analysis for Moneros Inc.? Actually, let me rephrase the question. Would doing a cash flow analysis be in the normal course of your duties as an accountant?
Not in the normal course.
Did you do a cash flow analysis for Nick Moneros too?
I do not remember.
Did you have did your degree of involvement with Nick Moneros 2 go beyond simple preparation of tax returns?
Yes.
What did those duties entail?
We helped do some bookkeeping work, meaning input of checks and deposits into a QuickBooks accounting software program so that it would aid us in preparing the tax return.
Thank you. Did you do the tax returns for myself as well?
We prepared some tax returns for you.
Did you ever do Mr. Monero's personal tax returns?
No.
Is sales tax payable on commercial rental properties in Florida? I'll rephrase the question. Was sales tax paid on the Dunedin property?
When you say was, yes, sales tax was paid on the Dunedin property. There's no time frame there, so.
No, there's no time frame. During the time that you worked for Nick Moneros 2, did we ever have a discussion as to the sales tax issue?
I don't remember a specific discussion, but I do believe we did speak about sales tax at some point.
Now, moving on to, this is Exhibit 3, I believe?
You said I should give this?
Yes, you hand it over. So is this if you could please familiarize yourself with this document. Do you recognize this document?
Yes.
What is this document?
This looks like an invoice that my office prepared for Nick Moneros 2.
What is required for state returns?
Form.
Your question does not make a lot of sense to me.
Were state returns required to be filed for Nick Moneros 2?
Yes.
Could our sales tax returns required to be filed?
Form.
Sales tax returns could have been required for Nick Moneros 2, Inc.
Moving on to this, could you notice the date?
November 15, 2007.
Moving on to Manella Exhibit, we're up to, I believe it, is it 4?
Yes.
Do you notice the date of this invoice?
Yes.
Do you recognize this document?
It's an invoice from my office.
What is this? Have we done one, two, excuse me, off the record for a second. Have we done just,
The time is 10:21, we're off the record.
this is,
Time is 10:23, we're back on the record.
did you and I have discussions as to whether sales tax was required on rental properties?
Yes, we did.
What is this invoice for?
This looks like for the preparation of to obtain a sales tax number so in order to report sales tax to the Florida Department of Revenue.
Would it be, excuse me if I misunderstand, but would it be fair to say that this is a initial application for to prepare a sales tax account?
Form.
This does look to be that, yes.
Thank you. Moving on to, this will be Exhibit 5. Had you ever discussed the sales tax issue with Mr. Monero?
I do not recall.
If I may, this will be Exhibit 5. Is this document familiar to you?
In general form, yes.
What is this document?
This is a pre-printed monthly sales tax form issued by the Florida Department of Revenue saying, basically, you didn't charge sales tax. Please complete this.
What's the date that this... What's the date?
December 2008. Well, the date of the notice is February 2009, so it's for a sales tax return for the period December 2008.
Is there any money owed on this?
There's no pre-printed amount being required on this form. Whether there was money owed or not, I don't know, because I don't know if there was any rent collected during this particular time period.
Referencing Exhibit 4 again. I can even... Exhibit 4.
I'm familiar with it.
Oh, all right, if you're familiar with it, do you remember the date on Exhibit 4?
I think it was December 2007.
Would this be a subsequent notice from the state of Florida concerning the sales tax, that sales tax account?
Objection form.
In your opinion, you can answer.
Yes, and this would be issued after an application for sales tax if sales tax returns had not been completed, for the last 12 months, or for some time period during 2008.
Moving on, this is going to be Exhibit 6. Are you familiar with this document?
I don't remember it specifically, but yes, I am familiar with it.
Do you remember the transfer of the accounting records?
Objection form.
You can answer the question.
Yes.
If you received this letter, would you have transferred the accounting records?
Yes.
Did you transfer the accounting records to Elizabeth Dunn?
Yes.
Do you know Elizabeth Dunn?
Yes.
Was there any issue around transferring the records at that point in time?
I don't remember any problems. We may not have been able to have done them all at once. I think I remember trying to email like a QuickBooks file to her, and it was too big. So I think I actually hand delivered it to her. I remember, a number of emails and faxes that I sent to Liz, saying, here's what you requested, and maybe even a subsequent email. Call me or email me if you need anything else.
Would it be fair to say that the sales tax agreement would have gone along with that as well?
When you say the sales tax agreement,
The preparation and filing a sales tax, I believe you referenced the creation of a sales tax account number?
we applied for a sales tax number. We would have given any documents we had at the time to Liz Dunn.
So there were no documents that you would have withheld?
No.
Moving on to Exhibit 7. Is this form familiar to you?
In general form, yes, this document is familiar to me.
Are you familiar with what a stipulation agreement is?
I don't know what that means. Stipulation has meaning in many, many, many different ways.
Are you familiar with what a voluntary disclosure is?
Again, the term voluntary disclosure could mean many different things depending on who you're dealing with.
Are you familiar with it in reference to a voluntary disclosure to the State of Florida Department of Revenue?
I'm familiar with it in general terms, yes.
Is a voluntary disclosure usually looked at favorably?
Objection.
Actually, let me rephrase it. What exactly is, in your estimation,
A voluntary disclosure form with the Florida Department of Revenue means somebody is contacting the Florida Department of Revenue, or maybe they were contacted by the Florida Department of Revenue to try to settle some past, maybe unfiled sales tax returns or some unpaid sales or corporate tax returns, and trying to come up with an amicable, reduced amount due the Florida Department of Revenue for whatever tax matter you're dealing with it on.
Have you ever dealt with the voluntary disclosure?
I don't ever recall filing, for anybody a voluntary disclosure form.
Have you ever dealt with anyone that's filed a voluntary disclosure
Form.
In assistance, yeah, most likely.
Would you know how the Florida Department of Revenue views voluntary disclosure?
Objection. I don't think the witness is here to testify as to how the Department of Revenue would view a voluntary disclosure. He's a fact witness. I'm not really sure where you're going with this, Attorney Fetcher.
Would the voluntary disclosure and the filing of the initial sales tax account have been beneficial in any negotiations if back due sales tax was owed?
Again, sir, he's not here to testify.
He's actually testifying to the fact that he actually filed that and was. I won't read into it.
Again, I note my objection.
You can answer it.
From my understanding, the Florida Department of Revenue wants to collect sales tax. So if you come to them voluntarily, if they are able to, they will try to settle with the taxpayer amicably in order to collect past due sales tax.
Thank you.
Attorney Fetcher, before you get to the next document, sir, please let me know.
Did you ever
And do not
discuss?
show it to the witness.
Did you ever discuss the sales tax issue with Mr. Monero?
I do not recall.
Did you ever discuss the sales tax issue with Lawrence Steinberg?
I do not recall.
Did you ever discuss the sales tax issue with anyone? And if I may, I would refresh your memory as to.
It would have been.
Leading the witness, sir. Please stop from doing that. You've been doing this now for 4 days. If you recall, Attorney Graver at Ms. Dunn's deposition walked out, sir, because that was one of the reasons. You continue to lead the witnesses. It's improper, sir.
I would also like it on the record that Mr. Graver pled the fifth on behalf of his client.
Sir, the testimony of Ms. Dunn can speak for itself, sir. But you're leading this witness, sir, and I'm going to object.
Did you ever discuss the sales tax issue with anyone besides myself?
I do not recall.
Did anyone besides myself suggest filing what's the proper terminology for that filing?
The voluntary disclosure form?
Or the creation of the sales tax account?
The creation of the sales tax account is something that you have to do to get a sales tax number.
Did you ever discuss the creation of that account or a voluntary disclosure with anyone besides myself?
I do not recall.
In your opinion, were those actions beneficial?
Yes.
I think that's all I have for right now.
Mr. Fetcher, I'd like to go on the record, sir, because I see in front of me that you've handed what appears to be a 2010 tax return for Nicholas Monero, which was not produced by Mr. Manero, sir, and I'd like to know where you got it from.
Actually, this was produced by Actually, it was produced by Mr. Manero in the divorce proceeding per our confidentiality agreement, which all documents are available to me.
No, sir. That is not what the confidentiality agreement is, sir. You
Yes,
have
it is.
received a document, sir, from presumably your mother. Is that what you're telling me, sir?
Actually, you received and communicated with the divorce attorneys on the other side and shared documents that way, just as our initial confidentiality agreement allowed me to receive documents.
No, sir, it did not. You have a 2010 tax return from Mr. Nicholas Manero that was not, Mr. Manero did not give permission, sir, for you to receive this document. It is a crime for someone to receive or to give someone tax returns without their consent, sir. So I'm going to, just for the witness's purposes, you are not to show this to the witness and ask him any questions with respect to this document, sir. You can do so at your peril, sir. And I will take it up with the divorce attorney when we return to Florida, because that is not what the stipulation provides, sir.
Why, when you return to Florida?
I'm sorry?
When you return to
When I
Florida?
return to New York, sir, I apologize. When we return to Connecticut, I will deal with it with the Connecticut attorney. I'd like to know who turned this document over to you. It is improper, and as I said, someone disclosing tax returns for sir,
it's duly
someone
noted.
disclosing tax returns is a crime, sir. So I will definitely take this up with the attorney in Connecticut.
Were the tax returns required under the discovery request?
No, they were not, sir. They were not, sir. They were not requested. And if you would have requested them, we would have objected to their disclosure in this litigation, sir. The proceeding between your mother, the divorce proceeding, and Mr. Manero has nothing to do with this litigation, sir. If there are documents that are produced in that litigation, they do not make their way into this case, sir, and that you have not provided this document to us. Again, I don't want to waste Mr. Manella's time, sir. I apologize. I will take this up with
Well,
at the
that's good.
appropriate
Take it
time in
up.
Connecticut, but you will not be asking him questions about this document, sir.
I was actually going to stop before you did that. This will be Exhibit 8. Do you recognize what this document is?
This is
Can someone
a,
please show me that document, because
It's
I
the final
don't
document.
see it, sir. I don't have a...
Yes, you do.
Is this it, sir?
Yes.
Okay.
this is a W-2 form.
Is that the W-2 form?
Actually, there are actually two W-2 forms.
What is W-2 for?
W-2 form is a report of wages that employers use to provide wages, federal withholding, and other income tax withholding to their employees and provide a copy to the Internal Revenue Service.
Did we file W-2? Did you file W-2s on behalf of the company during your
No.
employ? Who filed the W-2s on behalf of the company during that time?
A payroll company.
Is it customary for a payroll company to file the W-2s?
Yes.
Would this be an example of the payroll company filing W-2s?
Form.
This is this is an example of a payroll company or payroll software producing or preparing a W-2, but not necessarily filing it with the Internal Revenue Service.
Fair enough. What's done with those W-2s?
They're generally speaking electronically submitted to the IRS by an employer or on behalf of an employer, and the information on a W-2 is provided to the IRS either electronically on an individual's personal income tax return, or is submitted, a copy of it is submitted and stapled when a paper return is mailed to the Internal Revenue Service.
When you worked during your time period of working for Nick Manero's 2, Had you done my personal tax returns?
Yes.
Were W-2s filed?
I don't know if W-2s were ever filed by a payroll company to the Internal Revenue Service.
In regard to my personal tax returns, would you file a personal tax return without a W-2 attached?
If we submitted them electronically, we don't have to attach a W-2. If we prepare them via paper file, then we would attach a W-2.
To the best of your recollection, did you file W-2s with my personal tax returns?
Yes.
Thank you.
Mr. Manella, Mr. Fetcher, can I just go? Because I'll be very brief with this witness, unless...
Sure.
Mr. Manella, do you know the time period that you worked for Nick Manero's 2 Inc.?
Approximately 05 to mid 08. In chronological time, not necessarily tax year time.
Do you recall if you filed tax returns for the company during those years?
Did I file?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, we prepared them for Nick Manero's 2.
For Nick Manero 2. What about for Nick Manero Jr., sir?
I never
Asked and answered.
never filed a return for Nick Manero. I believe he had an accountant up in Connecticut.
And sir, I apologize if you've answered this question already, sir. Do you ever recall preparing any sales tax returns for the company?
Asked and answered.
I don't recall preparing sales tax returns for the company. For that company or almost any company over the past 13 years. I'm not saying I've never done them, but in general, my office does not do a lot of bookkeeping work and sales tax preparation or payroll tax preparation.
Do you remember, sir, providing any advice to Mr. Fetcher about whether or not the company had to file sales tax returns?
I don't remember. I don't recall if it was my doing, somebody that works for my doing, Mr. Fetcher's doing, or somebody from the Florida Department of Revenue's doing, saying that sales tax returns need to be prepared. I honestly don't remember whose idea jarred the need to file sales tax returns.
But to the best of your recollection, did you ever inform Mr. Fetcher, withdrawn. To the best of your recollection, sir, did you ever provide any advice to the company with respect to the need to file any returns?
Asked and answered.
I'm hoping that it was my geniusness that said, hey, you're not filing sales tax returns, but I don't recall specifically.
I have no further questions for you, sir. I appreciate it. Thank you.
I think we're all, no redirect, I think we're all
This
set.
is one.
This is what, this is, oh, aye.
10:43 and we're off the record. Excuse me.